This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Friday morning. It's March 15th, which means it's been a week now that the Wolves have been playing without Karl Anthony Towns. I guess that's technically 8 days, 4 games without Cat over those 8 days. So for today's episode, I thought it would be a good idea to just sort of reflect on what this first week has looked like. I think about a week ago, the pods Britt and I were doing in Indiana, in Cleveland. The topic was, what is this going to look like without Karl Anthony Towns? We now have a few sort of breadcrumbs in there of who's going to play, how they're going to play, and I looked at some of the numbers there, so we'll reflect on that for this episode. Yeah, again, who's been playing, how they've been looking, and even though it is a small sample size, we can look at how the team's numbers pre-Cat injury compared to the post-Cat injury numbers, even just to sort of illustrate style of play. I got Kyle Theige here with me for the Friday show. Kyle, how was your first week post-Cat injury?
It was good. I feel bad because I know you had one more pod to do this week, right? You had a lot of pods last week. So you had one more pod this week, and you chose me over Britt, which is kind of like choosing Kyle Anderson for the starting spot over Nas, but I'll take it. So
you've been sitting on that one.
No, I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, man, it was either me or Britt this week, and you made maybe the wrong choice. But
we did 2 with Britt. I did 1 with Britt on Thursday and Friday, and I honestly wasn't feeling like doing. I wanted to get in on the like weird LA Utah break that they have too. So we'll get Brett back.
I was hoping for a 4-hour Brit pod where you guys just drove from Indiana to Cleveland, because I imagine there was a lot of fun conversations that weren't basketball. But no, it's been what? Yeah, a full week, I guess 8 days since the Karl news. And it's been, mostly up, I think. That's not even an optimistic take. They obviously had one of the more impressive wins of the season in Indiana. You were there. Capital, all closed out with that awesome block. Then they dropped a game to the Cavs that I thought they probably should have won. Obviously, officiating stuff, you did a pretty good job talking with Britt about that. Lakers game, Lakers are just a tough matchup when you don't have all your size, because the Lakers have a lot of size. And then to do what they did against the Clippers, I get hyperbolic sometimes, but not just standings related, but being on national TV and also being against a team that, just a couple weeks ago, it was like Ryan Russillo had them as his pick to come out of the West, the Clippers. They just kind of punked them, right? And I know you and Jace did a full pod after it, but I don't know if we got into it enough. The thing that stood out for me after rewatching the game, the Wolves play, I said this before, like a 1990s style of defense and physicality. And with, these rumors or these conversations about the rules changing in the league and allowing more physicality and defense come playoff time, I know we still have 16 games left, but I think it's something to put a pin in, because you saw it that night, right? Paul George just doesn't want to have physicality come his way. And when they did that, it completely ended the game. And it's kind of their calling card now. Is not only are they good on defense, but they're really physical, and that messes teams up.
Yeah, I just pulled the numbers for the 4 games, like over the 8 days where the Wolves rank. And actually, I think I'll go through them. A lot of the numbers I think actually kind of make sense of like, this would happen without Karl in the game, The one number that I don't think really does make sense, or isn't maybe really representative of where this team is defensively right now, is over the week, they ranked 16th on defense, right? Obviously, they've been first in defense all season. I think so much of that has to do with you don't have Rudy Gobert, right? For that game against the Lakers, and then even against the Clippers, he missed a chunk of that game being hurt there. But for the most part, I think it kind of makes sense. The offense has been about the same in this week without Cat. They've been 15th on offense, 16th on defense, and 13th in net point differential. Whereas for the season, right, where before the Cat injury, they were 17th on offense, first on defense, second in net point differential. I think the one I was most curious about was the offensive side of the ball. So maybe we can start there before getting into the defense, which I'm with you, because I'm not concerned about that. I don't think they're going to be middle of the pack defensively when we look at the 25 games Cat misses, right? I think this maybe isn't the number 1 defense, but I think it's going to shake out to still be top 10, maybe top 5. Offense is the area that I think we've had you have the biggest questions. It's Karl Anthony Towns is gone. He's one of your best, if not best, offensive player. But I was surprised by how much I think the logic of these numbers kind of lined up to me, like I was saying before, even in a small sample size. So they've done a really good job of limiting their turnovers and getting offensive rebounds. That's why the offense has stayed at the same level, basically, right? They've struggled to make shots at a high clip, and they've struggled to get to the free throw line. Isn't kind of all that stuff a good representation of, Cat being out?
Mm-hmm.
Cat's a high turnover player. He doesn't really get a ton of offensive rebounds since moving to playing the 4. So I understand why, you take him out of that. Maybe you get fewer turnovers, you get a couple more offensive rebounds. And then, 2 things Cat is great at, right, is efficient shooting and getting to the free throw line at a high clip. Those things have fallen off there. 6th most turnovers when Cat was playing to 6th least turnovers for the first week without Cat. 8th fewest offensive rebounds when Cat was playing to 8th most this week. Again, I think that kind of makes sense. Then from shooting, 23rd in effective field goal percentage since Cat has been out, when they were 9th before he was hurt. 24th in the league in getting to the free throw line with Cat out. 4th before he was hurt there. I think there's a lot more like micro things here, and we can go through that player by player. But how do you just kind of overall feel about the offensive side of the floor? What, if anything, do those numbers tell you something?
Yeah, the one added thing I want to throw in here is that Lakers game without Rudy was about as on par with that Suns game when they just had beaten the 2 Warriors. I take nothing from it. Props to the Lakers, I guess, for winning, but I just completely threw that one out of any sort of data. So I really focus on this Clippers thing again, because to your point, they crushed the offensive glass and they were really good with, preventing turnovers. They only had 9 turnovers in that game, but I'm pretty sure they had 6 in the first quarter because they kept talking about it on the game. You know what I mean? Like Reggie Miller's like, another turnover. So they only had like 3 the last 3 quarters. But everything you said kind of makes sense, right? Like without Carl, they just lose, that secondary score that can just – this team still struggles to score. Sure. It does kind of feel like over the last week without Carl, they've not – I don't know if the numbers even back this up. It just kind of feels like they've morphed into a Indiana light where they're just kind of casting more threes because they need other guys to take threes. But Jaden McDaniels would be the one I'd point the most. It's like they're just not going in. And when they're not going in, it doesn't really matter how many threes you take. So without Carl, they just have – a less of a propensity to make threes, to take threes, to score. But then on that same thing, we talked about the turnovers. Before Carl got hurt, I remember seeing a stat that he was like 1st in the league in turnover rate on drives. Mm-hmm. And that probably matches the eye test, right, for people that watch him. Like the driving part of his game has been relatively new, right, in the last couple of years. I remember you kind of compared it not to Giannis, but Giannis-like of, pump and go. But he was also, I only think, like 3rd to last in the league on those drives of assists. Like once he goes, that's it. Like he's going.
That's where he's going.
And he's not detouring, he's not pausing. Like it's just so without him, there's I guess less guys to attack the basket, which then feeds into, didn't you say they've really dropped from a free throw rate?
Yeah.
Because they don't really have, and again without Rudy too, who takes a lot of free throws when they just kind of get the ball to him in the post and they foul him, but they don't really have another guy that's going to get to the line. And this is bigger picture, is what I've always thought about, like come draft time and stuff. That's not a conversation for today, but they just need another like guard or wing that's like, my ideal draft pick would be like a Malik Monk, right? Like I know that is far and away, but I just think this team needs another guy that can get to the line, can take threes, space the floor, all that stuff. We'll talk about it in June and July, but yeah, the numbers that you have on the screen right now kind of.
Yeah, I just feel I put up the 3-point numbers there. Can you see them? I mean,
yep. Yeah, Ant's taken a lot of them, 31. But Nas has kind of come in too, and there's a whole Nas discussion that you've had all week, but we can have again today. Is Nas was drafted, right, to be dollar store Karl-Anthony Towns, but then he's really molded himself more into a wing. But now he's kind of flipped back to like, actually, we kind of need you to be dollar store Karl-Anthony Towns for a while and just let it fly. And when he's shooting, I mean, on screen there, he's 13 for 28 in these last 4 games at 46%, which matches, I think, his season percentage of like, I think he's shooting almost 42% now. So anytime he's taking a 3, it's probably a good look.
Yeah, just to run through these quick, in the 4 games they've played without Cat, Ant is shooting 23% from three. Jaden McDaniels is shooting 14% from three.
That's got to be a miscalculation, right? Oh no, he's actually been terrible.
Naz Reid 46% from three. Nickeil Alexander-Walker 47% from three. Mike Conley 32% from three, and then you kind of go down. TJ Warren's 1 for 7, so 14% in that time. Jordan McLaughlin 4 for 9. I think that was all in that one game against the Lakers. 44% from three there too. So I take that to be like, Ant alone shooting 22% from three in this time. I'm kind of surprised they have a average offense. Plus you assume Jaden is going to do more, and he hasn't been making the shots at a higher clip. I mean, maybe it's gotten balanced out by Naz Reid making nearly 50% of his, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker making nearly 50% of his. But I also take that to mean like there's probably some progression to the mean coming for, Ant isn't going to shoot 20% from three the whole time. Cat's out. Jaden, I mean, maybe, but he'll probably just stop taking them if he does. And even if Nickeil and Naz don't stay at that exact same rate, it's going to kind of, we've known them to be, those aren't like flashes in the pan. Ant shooting 22% from three feels like it isn't a reality to look at.
I need to interject quick because it's my duty. I know you're kind of kidding, but Jaden McDaniels should not stop taking threes. Like, I know he's been terrible. No, absolutely terrible. 0 for 8 from the field. I think it was 0 for 5 from three against the Clippers. But as long as he's out there, and I would imagine this is the message the coaching staff is giving to him, he has to keep shooting them. Mm-hmm. Because the worst part about Kyle Anderson this season is he just doesn't take them. And for Jaden, I don't care. All of them are front rim. I don't know if it's a leg thing. I don't know if, like, just in terms of running on empty or mechanics or whatever, but he has to keep shooting those threes. Can you put that graphic up one more time? Because there's one other column that I thought was really interesting for either the YouTube audience or if you're listening at home. In the last 4 games, just think about this of any other 4-game stretch you've either watched this team or any other team in the league. The Ants taken 24 free throw attempts. The next closest is 11. So shout out to Naz Reid, but I mean, that's just kind of weird and rare. Like, you would hope that there's another guy on the team that, 11 free throws over 4 games is what, 2.5? Not great. So that to me is the
only other player who's taken double-digit free throws.
Yeah. So bigger picture, until Carl comes back, this team isn't like really a grifting team that tries to do all that shenanigans to get free throws. But the way I look at basketball and would try to build it, like, you need to get to the free throw line. And there's a whole officiating conversation and stuff. We don't need to do that today, nor is it even applicable to this. They just need to get to the free throw line more because come playoff time, that is really a way to obviously get free points, but also then set your half-court defense, prevent transition, all that type of stuff. So that one kind of was like, I hope these next 4 to, 16 games, someone else steps up into that category, whether it be Rudy, whether it be Naz, or, some guard off the bench like Nickeil.
Just while I have this up.
Stop it, dude. Just take this off. What are we doing?
No, Jordan McLaughlin, a plus 37.
Jaden McDaniels, a minus 38.
Yeah, well, I was starting on the positive side of it.
He's worse than Leonard Miller and Wendell Moore. No, it's been really bad for Jaden, but on the flip side, it's been really, really, really good for Jordan McLaughlin, who I think he's a free agent after this season, right? Like, he has had a weird career. He's undersized. He's not the most athletic, but I think you comped him to like the TJ McConnell thing in Indiana. He has done enough that he deserves to be in the league for a while and deserves to be on a good team because his impact, he can just catch DMPs for 2 or 3 straight weeks. And it's like, hey, actually, we need you tonight. And he is awesome. Even if he doesn't do anything, it's just like when he checks on the floor, there's this energy level amongst his teammates.
It's so weird because I went back and rewatched it too, and it's like when they went on that big run against the Clippers, in the second quarter, and then he kind of like, Jordan McLaughlin's out there, but it wasn't necessarily like give the ball to Jordan every time and he's going to sprint run it. It's just like when he gets on the floor, to your point, there is just a different light goes on, or just the other 4 players. I almost see it in the other 4 players as much as I see it in J-Mac, if that makes sense. It's like, okay, time to go. Jordan's here. Like, we're just playing faster. And I think if you didn't like have the past history of knowing that Jordan McLaughlin's kind of presence just brings it, you'd watch that back and be like, well, I don't know. Like, it's not like McLaughlin is just the one with the ball all the time doing it, but there is something to that the team just plays faster when he's on the floor, the ball movement, the body movement, they're just north-south going more. And that's part of the answer here offensively, right? Without Cat is just finding more ways to get more easy buckets, because when they get into the half court, so long as they don't have Cat, like they're not going to be a good offensive team, right? Like you're going to just be trying to get by. Mediocre, I think, is an accomplishment there, given some of the spacing issues, just because you've lost some juice. But that's one way, and it's like, yeah, it'd be crazy to me to not be playing Jordan McLaughlin here, even once Monte Morris is back, particularly with this group, given that feels like part of the answer, right? Is just playing faster.
And this is probably a weak analogy that's just compounded by the fact that the Wolves started this non-Carl time against Indiana Pacers, and then had to play on Monday against the Lakers without a Rudy. But it just, watching how the Pacers have been built, they're a team, they're kind of like my OKC Thunder for you, right? They're always the team I'm kind of checking out in the background. Sure. But I have always wondered what a team built like Indiana for Ant would be like a team that just takes a ton of threes and tries to outscore you. Now, obviously, it's really nice having a soon-to-be four-time Defensive Player of the Year on your team, but it was interesting to have a week where this team just kind of got out in transition a little more. I mean, a couple weeks ago it was hilarious. They had gone multiple games, right? Hundreds of minutes without scoring in transition. And now to just have this kind of more athletic team, you throw Nikhil out there, get Nas just up, run and gun a little bit. It's been interesting to see. I don't know if it's a formula for long-term success or winning, but yeah, I mean, and shout out to Nas again too, because when he came in, he just basically gave you everything Carl did except for the free throws.
Kyle, let's grab our first break here. English muffin time. Today's show is brought to you by Stone and Skillet. You can go to stoneandskillet.com to check out Stone and Skillet's English muffins. You can use promo code Dane for a 20% discount on your purchase. Obviously, Kyle and I love these. We kind of make a joke out of how much we love them, but it's actually comes from a genuine place. Again, I ran out of Stone and Skillet English muffins. Molly went to the grocery store and got normal English muffins because she didn't go to Whole Foods where they do have them. I made an English muffin this morning with peanut butter on it that wasn't Stone and Skillet, and it wasn't the same. It's just like airy. My favorite part about them is that, and I know you feel this way too, but it's actually like a filling meal when you have Stone and Skillet. Like you said, you can use it for a sandwich too. Doesn't even need to just be like a morning thing. There's 6 grams of protein in there. And just honestly, as somebody who's always bought and ate English muffins, they're my favorite. I really like these, and I like the story behind Stone and Skillet too.
A hot take I have is that we don't eat turkey and stuffing enough. Like we only do it for like a couple weeks in November. So I ordered one of the stuffing muffin ones, and I just made like this wicked good turkey little stuffing, the English muffin, and I poured a little gravy.
You put stuffing?
Yeah, I made a whole thing about it. It was just that's the best way you handle leftovers after Thanksgiving is to make sandwiches. So I did one of those yesterday actually, because it was our friend Cam Meekin's birthday. So shout out to Cam who is running Stone and Skillet. But they are the best, and if you haven't tried them, having a promo code and then also having a really healthy but nutritious and 6 grams of protein option out there is cool. So you can order them online, or again, I don't think the promo code works at Whole Foods, but it's always worth a shot. Shoot your shot. Mention Dane's name when you check out at your local Whole Foods, and maybe they'll hook you up. But definitely try them because they're the best English muffin on the market.
Yeah, super cool story behind Stone and Skillet too. 3 brothers who started this thing in Boston, grew it, and it's spreading out west here. So go to stoneandskillet.com to check it out. Try the English muffins. I know actually a lot of other, but this is maybe like the most well-received product I think we've ever promoted on here, just from the amount of people who are like English muffins, So check that out, and you can just go to Whole Foods too. It's right in the bread section there. So stoneandskillet.com, promo code Dane for 20% off. And then also, as always, we are brought to you by Prize Picks. You can go to prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app and use the promo code Dane again for a $100 sign-up bonus. The weekend's a fun time to get on Prize Picks, right, Kyle? Like, you look at the array of, obviously, there's NBA games tonight or Saturday. If it's on Saturday, you can look at sort of the Wolves projections there. I think it's kind of like a time where you can maybe take a little advantage of that if you've been watching these 4 Wolves games, right? Of like, or we're about to talk about it,
Yeah.
how the usages have changed and the minutes played, who's scoring and stuff like that. So you can jump on that with the Wolves, but otherwise, there's a million different things over the weekend. I mean, is there golf this weekend? You would know that.
There
more than I
is golf
would.
this weekend, the Players Championship, but it's also important. You always do this to say this is daily fantasy way more than it is like a traditional betting on the outcome of games. And I know in the last week I've had some tweets about that. So there is a differentiation here, and that's kind of why we roll with Prize Picks. It's more about just players, over under on stats. It's just a fun way to do anything. Scotty Scheffler over under 4.5 birdies. He's killing it. So do use the promo code, check it out. And I always say too, if you're going to get into this, it's a lot easier than any other app or anything to get your money in and out, which is a big thing if you're doing this. So shout out Prize Picks.
So you've gotten money out. You've won.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. Anyway, yeah. Trying to buy that house.
Yeah. PrizePicks.com, PrizePicks app, promo code Dane again for a $100 sign up bonus there. All right, Kyle, I do want to talk about the players individually, but I want to hit on just like some defensive stuff. Again, just looking at the last week, I don't think this one, I thought the offense stuff all made sense to me, right? Like the turnovers down, the offensive rebounding up, like it made sense with Cat out. The defensive side, I don't know. The numbers are blurred, I think, if for no other reason that Rudy Gobert hasn't played a ton of minutes, missed a whole game, when did he get hurt in the Clippers game? Was that the fourth quarter or the end of the third quarter? He missed a chunk of that game as well. And that's probably the biggest factor behind why they've been the number 15 defense since Cat has been out, obviously first for the season. I mean, it's not like they've been every week number one. We've talked about that before, but they've been consistently over a stretch of this span, a top 10 defense for this 8-day stretch. They have not been. And the biggest thing, this is kind of obvious, but the biggest thing for why the Wolves have the number one defensive rating this season is just their field goal percentage against them is the best. First in effective field goal percentage on the season. This past week, it's 18th, right? And we can kind of picture that in our head. Just, I don't know, I'm just the first, or I guess it was the Lakers game when Rudy wasn't out there. And it's just like, you could just see the holes in the defense more. Like literally, not like cutting, just like space, if when they're fully constituted with, Rudy at the 5, Cat at the 4, Jaden at the 3, Ant at the 2, it's like when they stick their arms out, the court is covered. And it's not when they obviously go smaller. It's what it looks like when you turn on an average team in the league on League Pass. You're like, there's susceptible area. Yeah, sure. I'm not quite Wizards level bad, but they've dropped. Teams are making shots at a significantly higher clip than them. They've also allowed more offensive rebounds without Cat, like against them, and they've also fouled a lot more without Cat. Obviously, a lot of those numbers on the free throws or the frequency with which they fouled is stirred up by that Cavs game and the Lakers game where they got called for a ton of fouls. Right, it was Jared Allen shot 21 free throws in the Cavs game. The Wolves as a team shot 22. And then the Lakers game, it was the Wolves shot 13, right? And Anthony Davis shot 13. Something. I think those two were equal there. That's a whole, rep conspiracy part of it. I'm just going through the numbers, being like, they're not getting to the free throw, or they're allowing the opponent to get to the free throw line a lot more. Obviously, that's hurting the defense, fair or not. But one area they've done well defensively, and I think when we talked about this of like, all right, you're going to have Cat out. How can that help you play better defensively where you can be more aggressive? You can attack more. You can take, I think, some more risks on the perimeter and get more turnovers that lead to runouts, and you're getting in transition more. It's the J-Mac thing. They have forced the third most turnovers in the league over this past week. So they're balancing some of that out. I think if you get more of those turnovers, plus you have Rudy's rim protection, like I said before, I think this team can still, when we look back at the final 25 games of the regular season or whatever that Karl ends up missing, I do have a belief that this is going to, last season, right? Like they were 8th in defense last season and Karl missed 53 games or whatever it was. So I don't think 16th is representative of what this team is defensively. Maybe it's representative of what this team is defensively if Rudy Gobert misses time as well, maybe even worse. We don't know. on that. But for now, that's kind of where this team has been defensively.
The Minnesota Timberwolves are not a better team by simply removing Karl-Anthony Towns, right? If you want to talk about this summer and second apron and all that stuff and maybe moving a Karl and getting other pieces, but simply just removing him is like no other company that you work for where a colleague is out sick and then now everyone just has to step up, right? There's just all of a sudden everyone has to play harder or play more minutes or all that stuff. But so there is no benefit to me, in my mind, of losing Karl. The one interesting dynamic from it is that with Karl on the team and you have $100 million committed to centers and all that stuff, I just don't think Finch, who I am pro, would be as flexible or as experiment with as many things. And now back to all the stats that you just ripped through over this last week. Without Karl, the team can play smaller and they can play Mike, Nikhil, Ant, and Jaden all at the same time and then just have Rudy to kind of police the paint, police the rim. And that's one thing I've always wanted to see. You talked about it with Jace on Wednesday when you were talking about maybe, will we see a starting lineup change against Utah this weekend based on what you saw to start the second half against the Clippers?
Yeah, what do you think on that? Or like,
I'm 100% for it. I mean, I just think right now, again, kind of going back to my gambling analogy, like the hottest player at the table is Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and that's like with Naz Reid having career nights every night, right? And I know that they would probably prefer to bring Naz off the bench. So for a while there, it was like, why are we starting Kyle over Naz? I would be just start Nickeil over Kyle, over Karl, and then shift guys down.
Jaden to the 4.
Okay, so that's what you said on Wednesday, and I had this written down. Or why not just Ant at the 4 for these short periods of time, right? I mean, again, it's all positionless and all that stuff, I know, but Jaden at the 4 has never worked. He's not a good rebounder. But Ant has just taken these challenges lately of, I'll just guard Sabonis. Like, I'll guard the biggest guy on the court.
Well, it's probably going to look like that no matter what, right? Because Jaden's going to guard Keontae George, right, in these Jazz games. Or Taylor Horton, whoever's initiating, Jordan Clarkson, whoever's initiating the offense, which, regardless of if he's in the lineup as the 3 or the 4. So somebody needs to, you're right, it isn't going to be Jaden. It's not going to be guarding the
Kyle Anderson starting at the 4 with Karl out is like checkers. Naz Reid starting is chess. And I think Nickeil starting is 3D chess. Okay. I really think you just get Nickeil has shown you now, you've said it yourself, right? Like the Alex Caruso comp. He is a starter in the league that just so happens to have to come off the bench. So why not that's one easy way to up his minutes, but it's also an easy way for Finch to still, I know Naz at the 5 hasn't always been the most successful plan, but they do have to do that now because it's the only other center they really trust. Luka Garza is probably not going to be in the fold. So that would be, if we get ahead to this weekend a little bit, something I'd be really interested in. Also just a slight revenge series for Nickeil against Utah, so maybe you could experiment with that too. But that would be my ideal starting lineup. And then you close the way you close, right? If you need some more size, or if hell, if Jaden
figure it out. I mean, whoever they start, if it's Kyle, Naz, Nickeil, whatever, like you're at a place where you don't need to be beholden to closing with the starters. There's more political pressure when this team's fully constituted to, play Rudy, play Cat, close with some of those guys. Now there's a little bit more desperation. There's smaller margin for error, right? Like maybe in a matchup, it is obviously Kyle Anderson that you need out there to close the game, and I know everyone's mad, but I think if that game would have got close against the Clippers in the second half, he had been the most effective of those guys, right? Like maybe it's going to be him and maybe it's going to be not. They can, to your point, they can play the hot hand here a little bit or the hot matchup or what it is. You can go through the first 3 quarters of the game and be like, what do we have here? Whereas we've gotten so used to over the course of the season, the structure of the rotations typically that get us back to, 5 minutes left in the game, Mike, Ant, Jaden, Cat, Rudy. It's not going to be that anymore. And now they have a couple different options.
Everyone is so down on Kyle Anderson and Finch for playing him or starting him. And I kind of get that. But I will say, as the number 1 Jaden defender, it's also like Jaden is bringing Kyle down because Jaden is not a floor spacer right now. So when everyone's like, how can you play Kyle? There's 2 non-shooters. Actually, it's 3 non-shooters right now because Jaden is, I want him to keep shooting because he's signed long-term and you can't be a 3-and-D guy if you don't have the 3. But you're not going to want him to blow his confidence even more by not shooting. But one thing, I said this on Tuesday at Flagrant House, and I'm kind of curious for your take on this as well. In sports in general, especially in the NBA, there is this like mantra, this idea of like, I don't really care who starts. It's all about who finishes. Kyle Anderson situation has kind of made me disagree with that because when they start him at the 4, and again, I like Kyle off the bench. He's still going to play. You and I were texting about the other night. Like, he has to still get his allotment of minutes. He does good things, right? Like, he is valuable. But I actually do think you need to focus on who starts because that Clippers game was a great example. They come out like that team that's just going to establish the run, getting 3 yards every down. And it's like, well, now it's 3rd and 4.
Totally feels like that.
And now it's 4th and 1. And it's like, well, what do? I guess we'll punt. So
and then Mahomes goes down and scores.
Yep,
and then you punt again.
And now you're down 22. So I would love to see them this weekend. And this has been my thing with the Carl stuff about treading water, the 6-game road trip. We had Jim Pete on last week and we talked about this. Just try to get to 3-3. Well, that Clippers game was so important because now you're 2-2 on this road trip. Mm-hmm. You don't have your second best big guy or whatever. And now you can just kind of split this weekend because the schedule is still a grind. The Nuggets have reclaimed the throne. You have to play them on the second night of a back-to-back. You have to play them 2 more times. So I'm
Three
still...
more times, right?
Well, yeah, 2 more times after
after the
second night of a back-to-back thing. I am in experiment mode. I want to see the hottest players right now, which are Nikhil. I mean, hell, going back to then the closing thing, maybe you close Mike, Nikhil, Ant, Nas, and Rudy. Like, if the Jaden thing is really that bad in clutch time, then maybe don't play him. I thought, by the way, one excuse or like one thing, I thought Jaden McDaniels' defense, like against the Clippers, was as good as it's always been. So that part of the game is still there. But when you can't shoot, you got to hold the same energy for Kyle that we do for Jaden or vice versa. So that's, I guess, all I wanted to say is I think Nikhil should be in the starting lineup. I don't really care who plays 3 and 4. The Jazz do have more size, but Anthony Edwards can guard John Collins. Like, I'm not super concerned about that, or even Markkanen. So that's what I would do this weekend and explore with. It is important how you start. I know it's important how you close, but I'm becoming more and more of a fan of it's also important who you throw out there to start the game.
Yeah, no, I think that's all really well said. And right now, how Jaden has been shooting and in correspondence, how he's been guarded, it has felt and looked
They're treating him like Rudy Gobert.
Kyle Anderson more so because it's just the openness. I mean, I thought the Lakers game when in the second half they took Anthony Davis off of Naz Reid, put Rui Hachimura onto Naz Reid, and then they had Anthony Davis quote unquote guard McDaniels. It's the dare, right? They're giving McDaniels the dare, the same one the Wolves give to Aaron Gordon when they play the Nuggets. They want Gobert by the rim to help on Jokic. The Lakers want Anthony Davis by the rim to help out on anything, and they're going to leave McDaniels open. There's part of me actually is like, I want to see that happen again, and like see Jaden kind of grow through that. And maybe it's even from the beginning of the game, you can anticipate it. I think part of that went really poorly against the Lakers once in the first 4 or 5 minutes of the third quarter, where Jaden actually got pulled off the floor about 4.5 minutes into that third quarter. So TJ Warren could come in. I think part of it was it surprised Jaden and Finch and the whole team. I don't think they were anticipating that change to come. It really reminded me of that Celtics game early in the season where like the Wolves come down for the first possession. You're like, okay, Drew Holiday is on Cat. Porzingis is on McDaniels. And it just like took the Wolves 5 offensive possessions to kind of figure out like, what are we even doing against that? Enough teams have now done this to the Wolves, to McDaniels, that Finch and McDaniels and everyone else needs to know of like, how are we going to play at this time? Or are we going to leave Jaden on the floor to play? It's the same thing the Thunder go through with Josh Giddey all the time, right? Like and watching a lot of the Thunder, you've kind of seen them get used to that, right? It's still a problem for them often, but they're like, okay, here's another team that's just ignoring Giddey. This is what we're going to do, or we're going to put Giddey in these spots where he's better at, being able to attack that or make his best places to shoot threes from, etc. Like, part of me wants to see the Wolves face more of that in these final 16 games or whatever, so as to be ready for it in the playoffs. So that's going to come. Like you get Cat back, whatever. Like these are playoff like adjustments that are pointed at Jaden McDaniels. He's got to be ready to go against that. The Wolves got to be ready to go against that. In the same way, again, that another really good team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, need to be, prepared for that for the playoffs too with Giddey.
Again, I know I'm running the fan base here for Jaden McDaniels, but I also am very cognizant that it has been not even bad, it's been brutal. But I want to ask you again, he was 0 for 8 against the Clippers, and they won by 20. So
the defense was awesome. You're right. I didn't pump the defense thing. I'm in total agreement with that too, that the defense has been there.
Well, thank you. But also my point was he just needs to keep taking them. That's the thing is like, don't change your game, because you can go 0 for 8 against the Jazz and probably beat them by 20, right? With everything else mixed into the stew here. I also just think it's interesting that for some reason, like, I don't know if this is a Minnesota sports thing, but it's okay to like everyone on the team or want them all to succeed. So Nickeil now is having the best year of his career, but it's like I've seen at least a couple people that are looking up the CBA to see if they can give Jaden's extension to Nickeil, and it's like, actually, guys, like they can have them both. It's awesome. They're combined making $6 million this year,
and even 28 next year. That's or 27 next year. Like,
and Mike's taking a 50% pay cut. Like, everyone chill. But I was just curious, off the top of your head, these are little apples and oranges here. One player's a little older. Who do you think has the higher career percentage from three, Nickeil or Jaden?
Jaden. I mean, Jaden was 39% last year, right?
Yeah. Jaden's, I think, 35.7% career. Nickeil is only 35. But, and I'm just trying to thinking long term, because everyone, when Jaden has a bad game, not everyone, I apologize, a segment of people want to talk about how much his pay stubs are in 2026. Nickeil shot throughout his career 34% from three as a rookie, 34%, 31, 30, then 40, 36, 38. I just think Jaden McDaniels is totally in his head for a player who, coming out in 2020, was flagged as being someone who might be a head case. And mostly, other than punching that wall and some, not even technical, it's just foul trouble. It's been good. It's been surprising. He was the 28th pick. But I also just think it's not going to be that hard for him. Like, if you talked about what do you got to work on in the summer, Jaden, it's just 1,000 threes, right? Like corner threes. I don't think there's that much to improve in his game to just get him back to being a value. But I'm also cognizant right now that the shot is not good. But that doesn't mean you have to bench him, because his defense, there's a 24-second clip against the Clippers where he just picked up Paul George 3/4 court, then got switched on to Norm Powell, then had to like get to the basket to protect the rim, and then got back out. That's part of the reason that they just basically strangled the Clippers, was part of his defense. So again, I love Nickeil, and Nickeil should play more minutes, and maybe he should close over Jaden. But it's kind of cool to have him and Ant and Jaden all out there at the same time with Rudy behind you and any random fan in the fifth spot, because that might be the best defense right now in the league. Just those four guys.
I think just it's so confidence, right? And like
maybe Jaden
clearly we're
books.
talking.
Yeah, like Nickeil figured it out by reading books.
Yeah, the confidence isn't there from Jaden, but like to do the inverse of that. Nickeil in that Clippers game, he wasn't receiving the Anthony Davis ignored treatment, but going back and looking, I mean, he was 5 for 6 from 3 in that game.
Yeah.
Just rewatching the game, he didn't get the ignored treatment, but he got like the James Harden is just kind of standing at 12 feet, kind of doing gap help, but kind of not really doing anything. And Nickeil was just like, let's go. Like, get me the pass in the pocket while I'm sitting here in the corner and I'm going up with it right away. Like he wanted that. He's like, I can't wait for the ball to get back swung to me in this corner. I'm going to shoot this and I'm going to make it, because I know Harden's only going to he's not going to be able to get out here and block this shot, and Jaden, at least in that game or in these games recently, it's almost felt like the inverse of that, where it's like, kind of hope it doesn't get back over here, or that's what the shot looks like once it ultimately goes up. I don't think one of the two of them is demonstrably, to your point, a better or worse 3-point shooter, like overall. And maybe, I mean, right now, given the confidence, of course, I'm taking
much different. Yeah.
Nickeil, but like they're both guys with kind of funky shots. They've both had extended stretches at different times this season and last season where they've been high 30s, 40% guys. And they've had stretches where it's like, okay, that was even Nikhil's 1 for 14 over his last 14 3-point attempts. Confidence is such a big part of that, but it's also that corner's got to be a weapon for this team right now. It has to be, like, particularly if that's the area that is getting ignored by Anthony Davis or watched haphazardly by James Harden or Paul George a couple times, was on Nikhil too. Like, that has to be a weapon for this team, just like getting out in transition does as well. And thankfully, Nikhil is taking that up. But Jaden's done that in the past too. Once he gets if the Jazz ignore him in the first quarter and he makes 2 open corner threes, I think the Wolves are going to win. It's not right. It's like the confidence is going to be there, and it's probably not going to be. It's like using Giddey. Remember the one game where the Wolves didn't guard Giddey? He had 3 or 4 in the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
You can really turn these plans on the opposing team's defensive plans on their heads by just beating the guy. They're beating the thing that they're letting go, and the players need to make those shots. But I think they both can.
I think this is the worst offensive stretch of Jaden's career, and that's pretty easy to back up. And I think it was maybe last season, but there was this player, maybe it was earlier this season, where Jaden was going through a confidence slump again, and there was this possession where Ant had triple teamed and he kicked it to Jaden, and Jaden hit the shot, and then the video shows Ant being I'm going to keep giving you the ball. So yeah, to your corner 3 thing, just kind of close this out. Did you ever look at Nikhil's shot chart against the Clippers? So he goes 9 for 10. It is 4 corner threes on the left side, a corner 3 on the right side, and then 4 layups. You know what I mean? So it's not like Nikhil's. I mean, I love that man, but it's not like Nikhil's bag is this otherworldly thing. He's just I'm going to hit corner 3s when I get them, sidestep or not, and then I'm going to finish at the rim. That's all Jaden has to do, and that I think is kind of my all-encompassing point. Jaden McDaniels is playing really bad offensively. But I think to just get his value back, all he has to do is hit the same shots that he's missing. I don't really think there's that much more that he has to add right now because they have Anthony Edwards.
Kyle, let's grab another break here and then come back for one final segment. I just want to kind of talk about the changes in usage overall. All right, Kyle. With Karl Anthony Towns out, right, usage needs to be replaced on this team. We knew that. We thought about it from the standpoint of who's going to start, who's going to play more, the minutes overall. But I think what kind of tells the more interesting story, or maybe more accurate story, even again, this is a small sample size of 4 games, is just what the usage rate is and who goes up in Cat's absence. And again, usage is just, think about it, offensive possessions used, a percentage of offensive possessions used, a shot, an assist, a turnover, and Ant has seen the largest spike in his usage rate of anybody in this time. And he was already first on the team in usage rate, had the highest usage on the team, 31.4% of possessions pre-Cat injury, 35% of possessions since the Cat injury. And in that time, again, since last Thursday when Cat got hurt, the only players in the NBA with higher usages than Ant were Luka Doncic, Jaylen Brown, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jalen Brunson. So Ant is 5th in usage in this span, and he's doing so effectively, even though, like we said before, he's only made 22% of his threes. That seems more like a cold shooting stretch than a shooting too many of them or something like that. You think that's going to bump back up. But the interesting one, to what we were talking about before the break, is the next biggest jump in usage has been Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and what he's been able to do was a low usage player, but it's gone up from 13.6 to 16.7. We've seen his minutes per game go up from 23 to 30 in this time. He's really been one of the guys who have stepped up their usage and just overall role more than anyone else. Naz Reid's has also gone up. Mike Conley's has gone up. And even Jaden McDaniels' usage rate has gone up in this time. This is kind of where we thought it was going to come from, right? Like those were going to be the areas where the dial was turned, right?
I think the coolest thing about Nickeil is that he's 25. And I just love looking at ages more than others. But, the Rudy Gobert trade 18 months ago, 19 months ago, one of the things about it was that this team has no more assets and they've just gotten old. And it's like you might, with all due respect to Rudy, and Karl's out right now, the 4 best players on the team might all be under 25 with
Mhm.
Nickeil, Nas, Ant, and Jaden. So, yeah, I'm with you. I don't know how much else I can say about Nickeil. He's been fantastic. He's also just he's a cool story too, right? Because he was a lottery pick that was probably classified as a bust
Mhm.
and then kind of has resurrected his career. I think he has done the best job. I mean, Nas too, they're one and the same with when being asked to provide more for the table. They just step into it without any sort of awkward transition or, it's not like Nikhil's all of a sudden turning the ball over all the time. He's just incredible. And he's got a little Jordan McLaughlin in him too, right? When he's out there, I mean, you've played hoops, like just having energy guys out there that are busting their ass and you see that happening on your left, like then you're going to play harder too. So I love any minute when Ant and Nas or Ant and Na are out there together, but they're going to, we all thought it was going to be Nas, right? Carl goes down, Nas has to step up, but it's really been Nickeil. And that goes back to my starting lineup thing of, man, it is still kind of a guards league. And I just prefer because I think Na can set the table for others or just break down the defense a little more. Obviously, Nas is cool too, but I just really like everything Nickeil's done. And he is going to have to be a fixture of this team for the last 16 games and then the playoffs too. Like, you have to play Nickeil as much as you can right now.
I think my thing with Nickeil Alexander, my buddy after the Pacers game, just random, dumb, hypothetical trade sort of thing. He said, would the Wolves do Aaron Nesmith for Nickeil Alexander-Walker? Right, Nesmith shooting like 46% from three. It's not that ridiculous of a problem. I said no. I said no to Nickeil, but like on paper, right? You have Nesmith, who is not Nickeil level perimeter defender, but he works hard. He's a good perimeter defender. Plus, he shot like nearly 50% from three in college, and that has translated over there. My reasoning for why I said no is I have a belief that Nickeil has more to show offensively.
Mm-hmm.
That is an in-between game, a pick and roll game. I think like he's slowed down around the rim a little bit more, where it's not that chaotic kind of throw it up drive. I think he has a finishing package. I think he can show more of that. Again, he just hasn't had a role for that on this.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk all the time about, or Finch talks all the time about when we're asking this season, how is Jaden McDaniels going to do more and grow? And Finch was like, he's not going to have a bigger piece of the pie this season. Karl Anthony Towns is back. It's still going to be that piece of the pie. Well, Nickeil kind of gets that size piece of the pie
that's a great
max,
point. Yeah.
And so there isn't a lot of pick and rolls that you've seen with Nickeil initiating them. There isn't a lot of, Nickeil against drop, and you're just like, okay, he steps in and takes it. We've seen some of all of those things. I think we can all think of a really nice high pick and roll with Nickeil where he's found somebody in the corner or found Rudy on the roll, whatever, but they're just rare. And I think whether it's in this 15 to 20 game stretch here or just even next season, as maybe the role grows more, I believe there's more to Nickeil's game than just being a 3-and-D guy, a really good 3-and-D guy. And that's what I think Aaron Nesmith is. Does that make sense? Like that was kind of my progression through that is I think a couple of years from now, like we could be really talking about Nickeil Alexander-Walker as something even more than what he's being lauded for being right now.
I mean, yeah, to take it one step further, if there are major financial decisions that have to be made this summer, and I think the listener might know what that could be, and we'll get to that point, but there's no reason Nickeil Alexander-Walker can't win like 6th man of the year, right? If you do move the other big guy into the starting lineup or whatever, like he does everything you'd want from a 6th man of the year.
Ask him to be a monk, and I don't know if he's going to I don't think he can elevate.
He can't be Monk offensively, but he's already so much better than Monk defensively.
True. That's a good point. I think though that there is some elements to his game, maybe not like really step back threes, but I think in the in-between area, he can do a lot. He's that ambidextrous passer. Like and the turnovers, I'm pretty sure have dropped drastically this year. I think there's more that Nickeil can do. And he's going to get the chance to show it here over this stretch of time of being there's going to be a lot of times for the rest of the season where he's going to be on the floor with groups as like the second, third option. How many times was he more than the fourth or fifth option ever? like earlier in the year. So it's an encouraging one.
And the great point you made is, and this is definitely why the Jaden versus Nah argument has started, or in pockets of the universe, is because Nah isn't getting really that much more of a leash. He's just, again, he was 9 for 10. If I told you any game, oh, you missed last night's game, Dane, Jaden went 9 for 10, you're like, oh, how much do they win by?
Yeah, right.
Because I would imagine that if Jaden ever goes 9 for 10 again in his career, they will just win that game. So Nikhil has just taken, again, to the October conversation about Jaden, we can't really give him that much more bandwidth. We just need him to, unfortunately and selfishly, be even more efficient with the bandwidth we give him, and he's done that. We've talked enough about Nikhil now that I get to plug my own other show, but you're not going to have this on your brain right now, but it is something I want you to think about over the weekend. We did a top 100 Timberwolves of all time list last summer at Flagrant Howls. I tweeted it out yesterday. It needs some work. Right now we have Jimmy Butler number 2 overall. I think that might drive people crazy. But if you go look at the list we put together a year ago, Kyle Anderson was really high, like top 25, because it was one season. He was fantastic. We had Nikhil like 82nd. Just think about this, the listener at home, get a pen and paper. I think Nikhil Alexander-Walker is a top 40 Timberwolf of all time. And I'll give you one thing, because you covered him. Right now, whose career has been more valuable just in a Timberwolves jersey? Nikhil or Jeff Teague?
Nikhil, because I mean, I think Jeff Teague's time here was underrated to some extent, particularly just for that first 17-18 year where they weren't this good, but they were it was the first Jimmy year. Like,
yep.
And I think Teague helped elevate them, had was important at the end of the season once Jimmy went down and in the playoffs. But yeah, the next 2 years he kind of got hurt, and the overall Jeff Teague story doesn't look like year one of it. With Nikhil, he's done it on a really good Wolves team too. Like if you were to give me something like, I don't know, Jeff Teague versus another player who was good but not on a Wolves team that went to the playoffs, like I feel like Teague almost gets that because he helped drive playoff winning. Well, Nikhil's doing that, and like I know maybe the list doesn't project going forward.
I'm just dragging you into the mud here.
No, but I think Nikhil Alexander-Walker will likely have an even better season next season than he's had this year. So for sure. And
it's in the contract that he's on, probably one of the, outside of any time LeBron can make whatever he makes, and that's probably one of the most valuable contracts. But for a guy making $3-4 million, his value next year is going to be even more incredible. And also too, he's a guy that as you do start playing around with one of those Dane spreadsheets, to me, he's like a foundational piece of the team at this point. Like I know we're getting way ahead of my skis here, but I just
think to the Neesmith thing too. He signed a 3-year, $33 million extension this summer to and I don't think anybody views that as like a bad contract. You're like, awesome, we got a young 3-and-D player at $11 million a year. Like just use that context in your head against what Nikhil Alexander-Walker is, and maybe we're a little biased, but better than what Neesmith is, and he's making a third of what
he is. The long term to me. I know Mike Conley just signed a 2-year extension, and he took a pay cut, and Mike was awesome, by the way. I just should mention that because you talked about it with Jace, but Mike Conley kind of finding his groove again against the Clippers was fantastic. But Nikhil is like the perfect fit for me next to Ant, right? A 3-and-D guy that, as you said, has a bigger bag if needed. But I mean, that is just an awesome weapon to have this year, on the books for next year. And again, at 25 years old, a nice foundational piece for this team in a trade that we've said now 100 times over, he was a throw-in. And now he is one of the best players on the team.
Can you guess of the Wolves rotation players whose usage rate has gone down the most in the non-cat period?
So in the last 4 games?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is it Rudy?
It is.
Okay, but is it like, I don't understand the numbers that much.
Well, I'm just
because
saying,
he doesn't play.
No.
Okay.
It's the possessions in which he's getting the ball less. He's taking fewer shots. He's has a lower usage within the Wolves offense. And I was thinking about that when I looked it up this morning, and I'm like, I probably wouldn't have expected that. I would have maybe without Cat anticipated a couple more of those often bad post up sort of things, or the push shots or the drives from 15 feet. But it's gone down. And actually, I think that's about Cat, right? Who gets Rudy going more than anybody else? I don't think I don't think they're treating Rudy any different. I don't think Rudy's being more passive or anything. He's just not getting like 3 lobs a game from Karl, or even like little drop-offs within the context of the offense. I think if we would have done this a week ago and guessed of like, oh, who's going to replace the national media say, who's going to replace Cat's 22 a night or whatever, we would have given some of that to Rudy, right? We would have spread it. I would have said Nas, we would have said Jaden, we would have said Nikhil. We would have given Rudy some of that too. And Rudy, while his minutes have actually, I think his minutes have gone up. Yeah, he was playing 34 minutes a game before Cat got hurt, up to 37 per game since Cat has been hurt. But the usage is down, which is all kind of a lot of people have like the theory of like, maybe just don't give Rudy the ball at all. Maybe less Rudy is better. And I think that there's a probably gray area in the middle of that gradient. But at least the first 4 games indicate that you're going to get a trial run for the don't pass it to Rudy sort of litmus test.
Is it weird that when you were talking about that I'm not sure I love it? Like, I know. Like,
I don't know. I mean,
I don't want Rudy to catch the ball from 15 feet either. I know that you've kind of created the push shot. Not sure I love it, but you were at least right on it.
I'm just saying it's better than just like triple pivots into back spinning hook shots.
I did love that when
looking at the rim.
I did love that when Karl went down with the meniscus thing and everyone like was just, oh my God, what are we going to do next? I think Alan Horton tweeted out Rudy taking 5 corner threes and shoot around and hit them all.
I was under the basket in that
and I was
video.
just like, oh, that is so perfect. No, I don't know. I'm not fiending for Rudy Gobert to get more usage or whatever, but he's so hella efficient. And I think his free throw percentage, I mean, he's shooting now 65%, which is right around what his career average is. I think you would assume that Rudy Gobert is a worse free throw shooter than that because you probably memorize all the air balls he's had. But
it's the classic Rudy thing, right?
Yep.
When things go wrong, it's so not aesthetically pleasing that it distorts your understanding of how good or of just what it actually is in the aggregate.
The cool thing about Rudy, if you're ever on Basketball Reference or is just go look, I'm just looking at his career back to like 2016 when he I guess he started all 82 in 2014, but he's one of the most consistent players in the league. And that's another reason why I kind of threw that Lakers game out the window is because without him, even though I didn't think he was at full 100% against the Clippers. I don't know if it was a hamstring thing. Obviously then he gets, I don't know, a punctured rib. I mean, I guess he said after the game to Chris, right, that he was okay, but also something felt like it has dislodged. Those are 2 different medical determinations in my book.
I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, Chris said yesterday at practice, or from Thursday's practice, that was Rudy didn't participate. There was no real update, I guess, on the Rudy thing. I don't know what. I mean, I just kind of like in the moment, and again, nobody's like told me anything. What I thought was like a cracked rib.
That's what I thought too. Yeah, and I was just like, oh my God, here we go.
Right.
But he's also, I will say, in his defense, he is like a pretty tough guy.
Sure.
Right. I mean, he takes. I'm not going to say the line, but he takes a lot of headshots. And doesn't get called. I mean, he just gets beat up a lot. Doesn't really get the whistle that other guys that get physically assaulted get. But I think they're going to need him for this Jazz series. I also think too he takes pride in not only playing but probably playing against the Jazz. So my uninformed opinion would be that he gets to play this weekend. But I don't know if completely. And that's not what they're doing, but completely taking away Rudy's usage or getting away from him. I still like him being in the fold, because he is efficient, and he also, back to my complaint about free throws, like I know 65% isn't a world beater, but I trust him at the line, and when he is getting intentionally fouled and making both of them or whatever, splitting them over 6-8 free throws, I think that's just a big part of allowing the team to reset and get back into their half-court defense. So hopefully that kind of ramps up a little bit over these last 16 games.
It's also not counted in usage when you set a high screen, roll to the basket, 3 guys collapse to you, and it allows the ball to go swing to Nikhil in the corner. That happens with Rudy all the time. The lobs have not been there. They're clearly like loading up. That's the spacing is worse, right? There's fewer 3-point shooting threats. So opposing defenses are like, all right, let's be a little bit more intentional about taking away the one thing that Rudy does at like a 80-90% clip, which is catch and dunk on lobs and pick and rolls.
This is probably the best way to close this podcast this week. Happy Friday. Because you got into the mud a little bit this week. Have you ever changed your opinion more on any player that you watched versus you covered than Rudy Gobert? I saw the tweet at Shaq, or about Shaq, and
Oh yeah.
Shaq's clueless comments about how Rudy Gobert is super overrated defensively, all this stuff. But I mean, that's what I think too. Is I had a perspective or a perception of Rudy Gobert during his time in Utah, and maybe it's because it's a division rival, all that stuff. But as a veteran and as consistent, and I mean, everything he does and brings to the table has been 10 out of 10, and I just have been blown away, and I was so wrong on him.
Yeah, Jeff Teague getting a lot of play in this episode. I remember when they got Jeff Teague from the Pacers in 2017, and me, like I try to watch a lot of the NBA. I try to be like one of those guys, like, oh, I know all 30 teams, even though I just covered one of them. But I learned my lesson with Jeff Teague in thinking that I had an understanding of who the player was from just catching them occasionally on League Pass. And then versus what it's like to cover a player, watch them play every single one of their games, sort of dig into who and how they play every time. And it really is just gives you a completely different perspective. And to some extent, I was telling myself that with Rudy when they got him in July 2 years ago, of like, hey, you think you know Rudy Gobert because you think you watch enough of the NBA and you have enough of an understanding over all of this, but it really changes when your perception of Rudy Gobert really changes. One, when you actually watch that fucking game against Terrence Mann and understand what happened in that game. That's one thing. You just watch that. Watch the highlights of it, and you can see what was breaking down there that was allowing Terrence Mann to be so open. It was the ignoring Jaden tactic. That's what they were doing, and they did not have perimeter defenders to be able to guard the other four players. So Rudy's helping their Terrence Mann. So whatever. You do that first and you go, okay. So that whole narrative is kind of booty. And you start watching Rudy Gobert play all the time. And in particular on defense, your just appreciation for the consistency of the defense and what it does from the never minds to the everything we've talked about. And when you're looking, like, even if I'm watching a Pacers game now, I'm not going after the game and being like, what do they shoot at the rim, or what is, like, how do they, like, you just don't do those things. And when you have the context, it's just necessary with Rudy to have the context of what the greater impact is of his presence with your eye test every single game, watching it, plus putting that together with numbers. Like, yeah, I didn't know that about Rudy either. I did not think Rudy Gobert, I did not understand what Rudy's impact is. And I understand, like I said all the time, the things that he doesn't do well and that aren't aesthetically pleasing. Like, please, no more left-handed hook shots that hit the top of the backboard. Like, those are never going to go in. There is two ways with Rudy, right? Where he doesn't do a lot of things well. He does even more things elite. And you just get an appreciation from watching it. And honestly, if I didn't cover the Minnesota Timberwolves and had watched every one of his games for the last 2 years, yeah, like, I wouldn't have the opinion I have. And I think anyone else who was forced by their job to watch 150 Rudy Gobert games would massively shift whatever preconceived notions they have of it. I think we all have, me, you, the other media people, the fans, like, there's just the appreciation comes with time. So that's what I was saying.
We had Rudy Gobert 25th overall in the top 100 list. I think he's probably made his way up into the top 15. I'm not sure Tony Campbell should be ahead of him, but we'll work on that list this offseason and we'll get back to you. But no, I'm with you on all that stuff. I also think, too, just in general, Shaq always has different perspectives on how the game is played.
It wasn't Shaq in particular, but that's
it's a bigger narrative than him. Yeah. And also, too, as I said earlier, it's a guards league. It's also just, you watch basketball, the average fan, it's like it's still all about offense, and no one, how do you practice being Rudy Gobert in the driveway when it's just you, right? Like, instead you're just going to shoot jumpers or work on your finishing package. You're not trying to set screens against ghosts
and roll
on a slanted driveway like I did. So no, I think that's I just thought it was a fun thing to bring up because, that Lakers game that I've thrown out the window without him, I don't think he's the best player on the team. And I don't think he has had the best season on the team. But with Anthony Edwards in the front of my mind, I still think Rudy Gobert is the most valuable person to this team and what they're trying to do, because he does. And once again, last year was an outlier. He's just kind of embraced what you said earlier about the usage thing, the dirty stuff, right? He joked to you and Britt last week on the road. Do you see those screens I said? That was a Kwame Brown reference. Like, he's like, did you see the screens? So he's been awesome. They're going to need him back. Hopefully he's back this weekend for this 2-game set against the Jazz. But yeah, I said this yesterday. It was like 20 games left, right? I'm like, oh, they got a quarter of the season left. I need a break. That's why I booked my Hawaii trip. Now all of a sudden it's 16 games. That's a sprint. Like, it's just a couple more weeks for this team to grind out wins. I mean, they wake up this morning, I think they're a game back in the standings, but they've also distanced themselves from the Clippers at 4 and 5.5 up, I think, on the Pelicans at 6 or at 5. And to me, this is still all about, because of the adversity that I wanted it a little earlier in the season, but the adversity they're now facing, they just need to finish in the top 4 and have that extra game in the first round at home, and then from there kind of figure it out. So well on their way, 2-2 on this road trip. Hopefully they can secure a couple more wins this weekend before it gets a little messier again with these Nuggets games.
Yeah, we will see what's next. It's Utah. I'm not going to be there. Chris Hine is. So Chris and I are going to record for the Monday show that might come out Sunday night. We might record that Sunday night instead of Monday morning. Off of that first Jazz game, and then we'll kind of start rolling again once they get back to Target Center. Jason and I will do Tuesday morning after the second Jazz game. Then it's the back-to-back against the Nuggets. Britt and I will go, and we got our second All-Star break here, and it's time to roll again. Kyle, I appreciate you being here. Tell people about Flagrant Howls or whatever else.
Oh, yeah, we had Flagrant Howls is still moving. We're having Jim Pete on every Thursday, and I'm going to be out next week going to see some family stuff, taking a little break, because then on this pod, I know we have a lot planned for this stretch run and for this playoffs. I know we plug this all the time, but really it would mean a lot if you can follow us on TikTok and Instagram. Cam and Cooper are doing an awesome job of helping behind the scenes, but we're going to have a lot more content. Like, I'm planning on doing a day in the life of a beat reporter where I just walk around and take videos. So come playoff time, I know we're going to be doing playoff live events and kickoff shows and all that stuff. So the content's only going to go up from here as the weather warms up and the sun stays out longer. So any of our platforms that you can follow or the sponsors that help us, if you could support them, that would be great.
Yeah. So Dane Moore NBA into any search bar on any TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. We're around that. That's another way to help the show. If you can, in addition to maybe helping or supporting some of the advertisers too. Kyle, this was fun. I'm glad we took stock of where the Wolves are at kind of in week 1 post cat meniscus. And they're in a place where we don't have to freak out yet. You know, there's that. I think that's my biggest takeaway is they have some answers for the holes that they need to plug. And there's going to be more, and teams are going to better understand how to play against this team as time goes on. But huge win against the Clippers. I don't want to say guarantees them a top 3 spot, but you lose that game, you know, you have the depleted roster that you have. Now we're talking about you lose that game to the Clippers, talking about probably being the 4 seed, maybe even, you know, fending off the hot Pelicans. Now they got a gap there. It seems like they have enough to sort of survive in this top 3 in the West. And then, you know, maybe in 5 more weeks or 4 more weeks, get Karl Anthony Towns back for the playoffs. We will see. He's Kyle Theige. Oh, go ahead.
I was the only thing that would have made this week better is if Josh Minot would have finished that off the glass dunk. Great throw from Deshaun Nix.
I put that in my notes, and I meant to go back and clip it. I was going to clip that play and just say Summer League is going to be awesome.
Oh my!
Because it was Deshaun Nix off the backboard to Minot, who fumbled it and missed it, and then it was a loose ball, and Leonard Miller kind of like dove on the floor to go get it, and then they're all just kind of back below the free throw line as the Clippers, right? Like went the other way, and I'm like, this is the type of chaos I want to see.
That Clippers game that afternoon, I texted a couple buddies. I was like, I just need a break. I think I need like 1 week off from the Wolves. I'll come back recharged. And then 4 hours later, I said the same thing to my wife. I was like, oh, I can't wait till Summer League. It's like, that's when I knew that I am absolutely broken and a sicko. But they're going to be fun. But yeah, until the Jazz game, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. He's Kyle Theige. Follow him on Twitter at Kyle Theige, like he said. You could check us out on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all those places too. And I'm at DaneMooreNBA on Twitter. Yeah, until maybe Sunday night, Monday morning with Chris Hine. He's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah, yeah.